Right after high school graduation, my dad had a sudden midlife crisis and bleached his hair platinum blonde. On college move-in day, he showed up dripping in streetwear, riding a custom Harley to drop me off. He was way too hot for his own good, turning heads the entire way across campus. Everyone staring assumed he was my sugar daddy. And of course, out of all the people in the world, the guy I'd been secretly crushing on was there to witness it. David. He just gave us one cold, sweeping look and walked away. Later that night, I ended up screaming, "Daddy," until my throat went hoarse. David showed absolutely no mercy. The midlife crisis hit my dad hard the second I got my high school diploma. The platinum blonde hair was just the beginning. By the time college move-in day rolled around, he rolled up to the dorms on a roaring motorcycle, decked out in designer streetwear. He pulled off his helmet and casually shook out his hair. I buried my face in my hands. "Dad, you're 36. Not 16. The second I stepped into my dorm room, my 3 new roommates practically broke their necks peering out the window. "Holy shit, who is that blonde god who just dropped you off? Broad shoulders, narrow waist, legs for days. The older man aesthetic is literally aiming right for my heart. Is that your boyfriend?" I dropped my suitcase on the floor. "That's my dad." The room went dead silent for 3 seconds. Then, one of them looked at me with absolute deadly seriousness. "Is your dad currently accepting applications for stepdaughters? Because I can call him daddy right now." I just stared at her. Right on cue, my dad knocked lazily on the open door frame. "You all unpacked, sweetie? Let's go grab some food." My roommate's eyes instantly shifted from shock to pure, unadulterated envy. I grabbed his arm and dragged him out into the hallway as fast as I could. Let's go, let's go. Stop embarrassing me." My dad raised an eyebrow. "Embarrassing? Do you know how many girls asked for my Snapchat on the way across the quad?" He smoothly took my tote bag from my shoulder and looked down at me. "What are you craving, sweetie?" I was just about to tell him to stop being so cheesy when my eyes locked onto David. He had just finished playing basketball. His dark hair was damp with sweat, his white t-shirt clinging to the sharp lines of his shoulders and back. His pale skin was flushed from the workout. My heart kicked into overdrive, heat rushing straight to my cheeks. For 3 years of high school, I had quietly passed him notebook paper, lent him pens, and stared at the back of his head more times than I could count. He was standing just a few feet away, holding a bottle of water. His dark eyes dropped to where my dad's hand was resting casually on my shoulder. My chest tightened. I opened my mouth to call out to him. "David." Before the word fully left my lips, his knuckles turned white, and the plastic water bottle in his hand gave a loud, violent crack. The guy standing next to him jumped. "David, what the hell, man? Aren't we grabbing food?" David dragged his gaze away, his voice freezing cold. I lost my appetite. He turned on his heel and walked away. The greeting died on my tongue. His friends stood there looking totally lost. What is his problem? He was literally fine 2 seconds ago. Another guy rubbed the back of his neck. No idea. He's been acting like someone keyed his car ever since he got back from registration. He paused, lowering his voice. "You don't think it's about Brenda, do you?" Brenda. Just hearing that name felt like a bucket of ice water down my back. On the day of his 18th birthday party, Brenda was the only girl David had actually accepted a gift from. So he was in a bad mood because of her. My dad watched David walk away, then looked down at me and patted my shoulder. "Don't sweat it, kid. Men are basically garbage anyway." I shot him a flat look. Right. Coming from the guy who had a kid at 18. Real solid track record. Late that night in the freshman boys' dorm, the silence in David's room was suffocating. His roommate, Brody, was scrolling through the campus gossip page when he suddenly burst out laughing. "Bro, you gotta see this. Some blonde dude on a Harley dropped a freshman girl off today. First day of college and her sugar daddy is already marking his territory." David lifted his eyes. "Who?" Brody tossed him his phone. In the grainy photo, the blonde guy was holding Sally's bag in one hand, his other arm draped protectively over her shoulder. Sally was looking up at him, a bright, effortless smile on her face. The comment section was completely out of control. "Freshmen are built different this year. Boyfriend already pulling up to assert dominance? The older guy blonde aesthetic is actually doing things to me. Who wouldn't want a 6'2" older daddy who actually pays for things?" David stared at the screen for a long, agonizing minute, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. Do girls really like calling their boyfriends daddy now? The next day was uniform pickup for the mandatory freshman phys ed boot camp. I dragged a heavy stack of registration forms around the campus quad for 20 minutes before finally accepting that I had zero sense of direction. The late summer sun was brutal, making my head spin. To make matters worse, my heavy duffel bag got snagged on the corner of a concrete step. I yanked it twice, but it wouldn't budge. Suddenly, a large hand reached past me. David lifted the bag with zero effort, his face completely unreadable. "Where are you going?" I blinked up at him. "What are you doing here?" "Just walking by." His tone was detached, but he smoothly slung my heavy bag over his own shoulder and took half the forms right out of my arms. I had to jog slightly to keep up with his long strides, my heart doing stupid little flips in my chest. Yesterday, why did you just leave like that? David's footsteps faltered. He looked at me out of the corner of his eye. I didn't want to interrupt you too. Interrupt what? We kept walking side by side. There happened to be a local farmer's market pop up near the edge of campus, and a guy selling produce was shouting over the crowd. Fresh watermelons. Sweetest on campus. David's comment about not wanting to interrupt had left an empty, hollow feeling in my chest. Needing a distraction, I crouched down by the fruit stand. I tapped the rind of a dark, deeply lined watermelon at the edge of the pile. I'll take this one. The vendor grinned widely. You got a good eye, little lady. You picked out the oldest one in the bunch. I was just about to nod when a cool, sharp voice drifted down from above me. So you really do like them old? I looked up, hugging the watermelon to my chest in total confusion. Yeah. I guess. He stared at the melon in my arms, a bitter little smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Makes perfect sense. I frowned. What? David didn't say another word. He just adjusted his grip on my bag and kept walking. I instinctively called out after him. David. He stopped, but he didn't turn around. I gathered my courage. Are you just having a really bad week or something? Suddenly, a guy jogged up and clapped him on the shoulder. David, bro, Brenda's been looking everywhere for you. She said to meet her by the south gate. Brenda. Those 3 syllables killed whatever courage I had left. I walked up and pulled my bag off his shoulder, forcing a polite smile. You should go. I can find my dorm from here. David turned to look at me, his dark eyes colder than they had been all day. Am I that embarrassing to be seen with? I recoiled, shocked. No. I just don't want to keep you from her. David stared at me for a long, heavy moment. I dropped my gaze to the pavement, refusing to say anything else. He had barely taken 2 steps when my phone started ringing. My dad's booming voice blasted through the speaker. Sweetie, you get your gear yet? I'm pulling the truck around to take you out to dinner. I scrambled to turn the volume down. Got it, got it. Please don't come to campus, you're causing a scene. Nonsense. It's my baby girl's first week. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw David standing perfectly still, watching me. My hand jerked, and I accidentally hung up on my dad. David's gaze was glued to my phone screen. I rubbed the back of my neck awkwardly. Sorry about him. He's just like that. David stayed quiet for a few seconds before letting out a dry, mocking laugh. It's really none of my business, is it? Annoyance finally flared in my chest. I glared right back at him. You're right. Brenda is your business. Go. I reached out to grab my stack of forms. My fingertips brushed against his skin, and I pulled back immediately like I'd been burned. David's eyes flicked down to the text conversation between me and my dad on my screen. His voice was terrifyingly calm. You better go too. Don't want to keep your daddy waiting. He turned and walked away into the crowd. I stood there hugging my bag, a lump forming in my throat. What the hell was his problem? If Brenda was waiting for him, why was he taking it out on me? I looked down to text my dad, ready to tell him to stop calling me sweetie in public. But when my eyes landed on his profile picture, I completely froze. When did this old man change his profile picture to this? I tapped on the image. It was an edgy, black and white anime guy, and right underneath it was a brand new bio. Sole love of my life, Vivian. Vivian. My mom's name. The first social mixer of the semester was at a Korean barbecue joint just off campus. I really didn't want to go, but my roommates practically dragged me by the ankles. If you don't go to these things, you're gonna be a ghost for the next 4 years. By the time they shoved me into the private dining room, it was already packed. David was there. He was sitting by the window, his jacket draped over the back of his chair, the sleeves of his dark shirt rolled up to his forearms. He was swirling a glass of liquor in his hand. Brenda walked over with a glass of lemon water and set it gently in front of him. Pace yourself. You're going to feel awful tomorrow. David glanced up at her, then reached out and took the glass. I couldn't stomach watching it anymore. I turned and walked right back out the door. If I had stayed 1 second longer, I would have seen David slide that exact same glass of water over to Brody. Brody looked at it like it was a holy relic. For me? Drink it. I stood on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, taking deep breaths. The cool night air helped clear the suffocating feeling in my chest. When I looked up, I accidentally locked eyes with David through the restaurant window. I immediately looked away. My phone buzzed. A text from my dad. Sweetie, call me when you're done. I'm parked by the campus gate. Before I could even type a reply, my phone started ringing. Dad, didn't I say I'd text you when I was done? He chuckled softly on the other end. Just making sure no one sweeps you off your feet. Who is going to sweep me off my feet? You look exactly like your mother. I took my eyes off her for 1 second and managed to steal her right out from under your grandfather's nose. Before hanging up, I threw one last glance over my shoulder. The dining room door was cracked open. David tipped his glass back and downed the rest of his drink in one smooth motion. His throat worked as he swallowed, his dark brows pulled low in frustration. Brenda was sitting right next to him, her hand resting lightly on his forearm. I ended the call, texted my roommates that I had a headache, and started walking. The wind picked up, making my eyes sting. I was walking down a quiet side street leading back to the dorms when I heard heavy footsteps behind me. Sally. I stopped. David caught up to me. He had left his jacket inside. The top 2 buttons of his shirt were undone, his collarbone exposed, and the sharp scent of alcohol clung to him. I took a step back instinctively. Why did you follow me? He closed the distance between us, his voice rough and ragged. Is he picking you up again? Who? Your daddy. I blinked, and the spark of anger from earlier erupted into a full blaze. The image of Brenda handing him water, of her hand on his arm, flashed behind my eyes. Who gave him the right to interrogate me? I lifted my chin and glared at him. How is that any of your business? The edges of David's eyes turned a deep, bruised red. So it's true. I furrowed my brows. What is true? He took another step, trapping me against the brick wall of the alley. His voice was desalistatingly hoarse. Is that the kind of guy you want? He was so close I could feel the heat radiating off his chest. My stupid heart started hammering against my ribs. David, you're drunk. He looked down at my lips, a bitter, self-deprecating smile twisting his features. If he gets to be your daddy, let me be your dog. Deal? I just stared at him. What? David. A soft, desperate voice echoed from the mouth of the alley. My entire body went rigid. Brenda was standing there, clutching his dark jacket against her chest. Her eyes were shiny with unshed tears. She saw how close he was standing to me and hesitated. But then she hurried over, reaching out to grip David's arm. I'm so sorry, Sally. Her voice was thick with apology. He's completely wasted. He doesn't know what he's saying, please don't take it personally. David scowled, trying to shake her off. Don't touch me. That was when I saw it. The silver band on the pinky finger of his right hand. The gift she had given him for his 18th birthday. It had her initials engraved on the inside. So they really had exchanged gifts. The last bit of warmth in my chest died. Brenda just tightened her grip on his arm. You can barely stand up straight. Stop fighting me. Brody and 2 other guys from the mixer came jogging down the street. Bro, what are you doing out here? Seeing Brenda holding him up, the guys immediately started feeding into the drama. Brenda to the rescue again. Looks like his lady is the only one who can handle him when he's like this. You two look too good together. Just make it official already. David shot them a lethal glare. Shut your mouth. The guy choked on his words and looked away. Brenda stared at the ground, looking embarrassed. Don't say things like that. A low, rumbling engine echoed down the street. Headlights swept over the brick walls. My dad walked into the pool of the streetlight, swinging his motorcycle helmet in one hand. His bleached hair caught the wind, looking absolutely unhinged and effortlessly cool. Sweetie. David's head snapped up. My dad took one look at David stumbling in the alley, and the casual smile dropped from his face. Without missing a beat, he grabbed my arm and pulled me smoothly behind his broad back. Listen here, kid. Stay the hell away from my girl. David stared at me, hiding behind my dad's leather jacket. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the motorcycle. Then, David slowly pulled his arm out of Brenda's grip, snatched his jacket from her hands, and let out a broken, quiet laugh. Right. Message received. Brenda tried to reach for him again. David, let's just go. He looked down, swatting her hand away completely. He let Brody throw an arm around his shoulder to keep him steady, and they walked away into the dark. Brenda trailed closely behind them. It wasn't until his broad shoulders completely disappeared around the corner that I realized the cold wind had made my eyes start watering. My dad shoved the helmet against my chest. For once, his voice was completely serious. You got feelings for that kid? I looked down, gripping the helmet tightly. It took me a long time, but I finally shook my head. Not anymore. I started actively avoiding him. And David went into a complete tailspin. When Brody pushed open the door to their dorm room that night, he found David sitting motionless in his desk chair. His phone was sitting on the desk, and he looked like he was attending a funeral. Brody jumped back. Jesus, bro. Do we need to call a paramedic? David looked up, his dark eyes swirling with pure frustration. She hates me. Brody threw his backpack on the floor and dropped onto his bed. Sally? David didn't answer. Brody started laughing. Oh, so now you're panicking? Back in high school I told you to stop acting so untouchable. You liked her for 3 whole years and couldn't even string a sentence together around her. David gave him a death glare. Brody immediately threw his hands up in surrender. Okay, okay. I'll stop being right. David gripped his phone, his knuckles turning white. What do I do? Brody rubbed his chin, pretending to think deeply. What can you do? Just keep acting like a simp, obviously. Brody dragged his chair over to look at David's phone. First of all, stop brooding in the dark like a serial killer. Let's do some market research. What is her exact type? Brody swiped open Sally's social media and started scrolling through her likes and comments. He scrolled down. First video, a guy with bright red hair smirking at the camera. Sally's comment. Red hair. It's the red hair. I am looking respectfully. David stared at the words, a deep crease forming between his eyebrows. Brody kept scrolling. Second video, a college guy in a black button-down, leaning against a railing and drinking water, his throat moving as he swallowed. Sally's comment. Good boy, drink up. Do you need me to hold it for you? David. Brody. Brody let out a nervous laugh. Gotta hand it to her, she's got a way with words. David's voice was borderline demonic. Keep scrolling. Brody swallowed hard. Third video, a fitness influencer with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, lifting his shirt to wipe his sweat and flashing his abs. Sally's comment. I want to use daddy's abs as a slip and slide. Brody couldn't hold it in. He burst out laughing. David shot him a look that could kill. Brody immediately covered his mouth. David's eyes were glued to the screen, tracking every single word. Fourth video, a guy wearing thin, gold wire-rimmed glasses reading a book in a library. Sally's comment. God, I love a morally gray academic. Absolutely feral for this aesthetic. David slowly looked at the massive pile of textbooks on his desk. Then he looked at the wire-rimmed glasses sitting on his nightstand, the ones he hadn't worn in 6 months because they got in the way when he played basketball. Silence fell over the room. Brody opened his mouth to read the next one, but David cut him off. Stop. Brody was fighting for his life, trying not to laugh. He cleared his throat. Look, man. Girls just say this stuff on the internet. It's a meme. It doesn't mean anything. David suddenly looked up, a terrifying light in his eyes. So she likes guys with red hair and gold glasses. Brody nodded slowly, sensing danger. I guess. David lowered his eyes, internalizing the information like a battle plan. A deep, unshakable sense of dread washed over Brody. The next morning during the phys ed boot camp roll call. I had just adjusted the brim of my cap when a massive wave of whispers rolled through the freshman formation. Holy shit, who is that? Is that a new instructor? No, that's David. I snapped my head up. David was walking across the turf in his tactical uniform. The bright morning sun hit him, illuminating the fact that his normally dark, untouchable hair had been dyed a vibrant, reckless shade of red. And sitting perfectly on the bridge of his nose was a pair of thin, gold wire-rimmed glasses. It made his pale skin look flawless, making his dark eyes look infinitely sharper and more intense. My heart completely betrayed me and skipped a beat. David walked straight up to me and nervously ran a hand through his red hair. 50 people were openly staring at us. He seemed totally oblivious to the absolute spectacle he was causing. He leaned down and dropped his voice to a whisper. Do you like it? I just blinked. The girl standing next to me inhaled sharply and started pinching my arm behind my back. I winced, fighting to keep my face neutral. It's fine. A spark of genuine hope lit up David's eyes. You like it? Before I could even think of a response, a massive collective gasp echoed from the other side of the field. Oh my God. They're matching. Brenda dyed her hair red too. My blood ran cold. Brenda was walking over from the second platoon. Her normally soft, brown hair was now a fiery, unmistakable red. In the sunlight, the coordination was impossible to miss. She saw David's hair and stopped in her tracks, looking surprised. Wow, what a coincidence, David. The entire field erupted into chaos. Are you kidding me? Just date already. Matching hair dye is insane. Brenda knows exactly what she's doing. Bro, you can't hide it anymore. David's face instantly hardened into stone. Shut up. But the damage was done. The more he denied it, the louder the cheering got. Brenda stood next to him, the tips of her ears burning pink. She spoke softly, meant only for him. I was just thinking about changing my look yesterday, I didn't expect. I stood there mentally cursing myself for being such an idiot. 5 seconds ago, I had actually let a pretty face trick me. I had almost become a pawn in their little romantic drama. David turned back to me, real panic flashing in his eyes behind the gold frames. Sally, it's not what you think. I looked up at him. What do you think I'm thinking? He froze. I pulled the brim of my cap down low over my eyes, making my voice as dead and hollow as possible. David, what color you dye your hair has absolutely nothing to do with me. The instructor blew the whistle, and I immediately spun around and fell into formation. Line up. Anyone caught talking is running laps. I stood perfectly still under the blazing sun, my spine rigid. Thank God the heat was so brutal. It dried the moisture in my eyes before anyone could see. For one split second, I actually thought he had changed his hair for me. Looking back, it was the dumbest thought I've ever had. That night, the tension in the boys' dorm was lethal. When Brody pushed the door open, he rubbed the back of his neck. Did someone turn the AC down to freezing? David was slumped in his desk chair, radiating despair. He was staring blankly at his phone screen. Right above the text box was a bright red exclamation mark. Damn, bro. You got blocked? It's really over for you. Brody winced. David aggressively ran a hand through his red hair, his voice completely wrecked. Why does she hate me even more now? Brody rolled his eyes and dragged his chair over. Are you insane? You show up with the exact same hair color as Brenda. It's basically a neon sign screaming, couple's goal. Sally isn't blind. Why would she be nice to you after that? David looked genuinely crushed. How was I supposed to know Brenda dyed her hair? I literally took the idea from Sally's internet comments. And this is why you're single. Brody leaned back, slipping perfectly into his role as the master strategist. But the reality is, you stepped on a landmine. You said you were gonna be her dog. What is the #1 rule of being a dog? David looked lost. What? You gotta wag your tail. Brody slapped his own thigh. You have to grovel. Buy her things, apologize, be pathetic. Girls love a guy who is obsessed. You gotta lower your pride, man. Do you understand? David stared thoughtfully at a post Sally had made 3 days ago. 90 degrees at boot camp. An iced watermelon juice would literally save my life right now. After a long pause, he gave a slow, serious nod. The next day during training, my body decided to betray me. Aunt Flo arrived early, and she was furious. Standing in formation under the brutal sun, I was clutching my stomach, cold sweat dripping down my spine. When the break whistle finally blew, I dragged myself into the shade of a large oak tree. I was just about to curl up into a ball on the grass when a freezing cold cup of iced watermelon juice appeared in my line of sight. I followed the long, tanned arm up and saw David. He was breathing hard, a thin layer of sweat shining on his forehead like he had just sprinted across campus. He pushed the cup closer to me. The ice rattled against the plastic. I got this for you. I stared at the frost forming on the outside of the cup, and I swear to God, my uterine lining retaliated with a violent cramp. I weakly pushed his hand away. I don't want it. David looked confused. Is this about Brenda? Hearing her name when I was already in blinding pain was the final straw. I said I don't want it. I practically yelled it, clutching my stomach and turning my back to him. I couldn't even look at his face. David stood there holding the freezing juice, completely spiraling into a pit of self-doubt. He immediately pulled out his phone and texted Brody. She refused the juice. She wouldn't even let me explain. She looked at me like she wanted me dead. What do I do? Brody replied instantly. You're an amateur. Maybe she just wasn't craving watermelon today. Listen to me. Go to the cafe and buy one of everything on the menu. Let her choose. David thought this was a brilliant tactical move. He turned and sprinted toward the campus strip mall. When afternoon training finally ended, I was practically a walking corpse. I finally had a second to breathe. Suddenly, 4 delivery guys on electric scooters slammed on their brakes right in front of me. Which one of you is Sally Sinclair? Your drinks are here. While dozens of my classmates watched in absolute shock, the delivery guys started hauling massive insulated coolers onto the grass. I walked over, completely bewildered. Miss, here are the 43 iced beverages you ordered. Please sign here. I looked down. Iced lemon slushies, frozen green tea, mango madness with extra ice, cold brewed oolong. 43 massive cups. Every single one packed with ice, gleaming in every color of the rainbow, spread out across the lawn. And right in the middle was a massive, handwritten receipt note. For Sally. David. My classmates started whispering and making, oh, noises. Meanwhile, I stood in front of an absolute mountain of freezing, icy drinks, feeling the knives twisting in my lower abdomen, and thought I might actually pass out from rage. The hormones took over. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I pulled his number out of my blocked list, typed furiously, and hit send. David, if you want to murder me, just stab me and get it over with. Then, I blocked him again. Leaving David sitting in his dorm, staring at a red exclamation mark, questioning his entire existence. After failing twice, David was completely desalistated. Brody watched him sulk, slamming his hand on the desk in frustration. Drinks aren't working. It's time for the nuclear option. Bro, trust me on this. There is not a single woman on this earth who can reject flowers. Flowers? Yes. Red roses. 999 of them. Have them delivered straight to the lobby of her dorm. Bury her in romance and cash. And so, early the next morning. I had just finished brushing my teeth when the dorm RA yelled up the stairwell. Sally Sinclair. Room 302. You have a massive delivery. I walked downstairs, totally confused. The second I hit the bottom step, I was confronted by a nightmare. A monstrous, 6-foot-tall heart made entirely of crimson roses was blocking the main entrance to the building. The flowers were violently red, bleeding a thick, suffocating perfume into the enclosed lobby. A crowd of girls had already formed a circle around it, taking photos and whispering with absolute jealousy. My vision immediately went dark. Because I have chronic allergic rhinitis. And I am violently allergic to pollen. Ah, achoo. My nose instantly flared with unbearable itching. Water started pouring out of my eyes like a broken faucet. Sally, this is the most romantic thing I've ever seen. My roommate squealed, shoving my shoulder. Roman, achoo. God help, achoo. I covered my nose with both hands, tears streaming down my face in endless rivers. I couldn't even form a coherent sentence. Meanwhile, hiding in the bushes outside the dorm, Brody was acting like a sniper doing recon. He excitedly held down the voice memo button to David. Bro. It worked. It worked flawlessly. Sally took one look at the flowers, dropped to the floor, and started bawling her eyes out. She was so overwhelmed with emotion she couldn't even speak. The tears are literally flooding the lobby. Sitting up in his bed, David heard the memo and shot up like a rocket. He immediately opened a fake Instagram account he had made the night before, after realizing he was blocked again, pretending to be a student council rep. Do you like the flowers, Sally? It's David. Half an hour later. Campus clinic. IV therapy room. I was slumped back in a sterile chair, questioning why I was born. My left arm was hooked up to 4 dripping antihistamines, and my right hand was crushing a wad of tissues as I violently blew my nose. My phone buzzed. I stared at the direct message, my vision going red with absolute fury. With one hand hooked to a dripping 4 bag and the other holding a damp, shredded tissue, I stared at the direct message on my screen. Do you like the flowers, Sally? It's David. My vision blurred, not from tears of romance, but from a fresh, violent wave of histamine-induced rage. My throat felt like it had been scraped with sandpaper. My nose was swollen and bright red, and my eyes were puffed up so badly I could barely see the keyboard. I tapped the screen with trembling fingers, typing with the furious speed of a woman possessed. If you wanted to assassinate me, David, you could have just used a knife. I am currently in the campus clinic on an antihistamine drip because of your stupid, toxic, 6-foot-tall floral monstrosity. Lose my number. Delete this account. Go away. I slammed my thumb on the send button, tossed the phone onto the sterile bedside table, and sank back into the vinyl clinic chair with a miserable groan. The ceiling tiles of the IV therapy room swam above me. Outside the door, the muffled sounds of the clinic, nurses murmuring, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes, the hum of the fluorescent lights, did nothing to soothe the throbbing in my temples. How had my life devolved into a cheap, chaotic comedy in the span of 48 hours? Less than 10 minutes later, the heavy door of the clinic was practically kicked off its hinges. Sally. I bolted upright, instantly regretting the sudden movement as a sharp pain shot through my forehead. Standing in the doorway, panting as if he had run a marathon through a hurricane, was David. He was still wearing his tactical phys ed boot camp uniform, but it was disheveled, the collar pulled wide. His vibrant red hair was a messy, sweaty halo, and his thin, gold wire-rimmed glasses were heavily fogged up from his breath. He looked completely unhinged, halfway between a runway model and a desperate fugitive. Get out, I croaked, my voice sounding like a rusted gate. You're trespassing. In the clinical sanctuary. David didn't listen. He took 3 massive strides toward my chair and dropped to his knees right beside the metal armrest. His chest was heaving, his dark eyes wide with a mixture of terror and agonizing guilt as he took in the state of my face. Sally, I didn't know, he stammered, his hands hovering over mine, not daring to make contact. Brody said. Brody told me that every girl loves roses. He said 999 roses was the ultimate move. I didn't know about the allergy. I swear to God, I didn't know. Brody is an idiot, and you are a larger, more dangerous idiot, I hissed, sniffing pathetically. Why would you buy 999 roses? Who does that? And why did you buy 43 iced drinks yesterday when I was literally curled into a fetal position from cramps? David blinked, his expression completely blank. You had cramps? Yes. I didn't want watermelon juice. I wanted to die in peace. But Brody said. He trailed off, his face pale. He told me you were just playing hard to get because of Brenda. He said if I bought one of everything, you'd have to choose one. Who cares about Brenda? I snapped, my throat stinging. Why are you even doing this? If you want to play matching hair dye games with her, go do it on the other side of campus and leave me out of your weird, toxic mating rituals. David's hands finally dropped, landing heavily on the edge of my mattress. Matching hair? I didn't match her. I dyed it because of you. Don't lie to me, I scoffed, turning my head away. The whole quad saw you too. You looked like a pair of matching highlighters. I didn't know she was going to dye her hair. David's voice cracked, sounding raw and genuinely desperate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, his fingers shaking as he unlocked it and thrust it in front of my face. Look. Just look. I squinted through my swollen eyelids. It was a screenshot of my own public social media profile. Specifically, a comment I had left on a video of a random red-haired influencer 3 weeks ago. Red hair. It's the red hair. I am looking respectfully. I saw this, David whispered, his face burning a deep, embarrassed crimson that matched his hair. Brody showed me. And the gold glasses. He pointed to the wireframes on his nose. You said you liked a morally gray academic. I don't know what that means, but I have these glasses. I started wearing them. Again. For you. My jaw dropped. The anger in my chest suddenly hit a brick wall of sheer, unadulterated bewilderment. You dyed your hair because of a TikTok comment? I wanted you to look at me, he said softly, his head bowing. The way you used to look at the back of my head in high school. But then we got to college, and you changed. You had him. Him? Who is him? Your. David swallowed hard, the words seeming to physically pain him. Your daddy. The blonde guy on the motorcycle. The one who dropped you off. The one who told me to stay the hell away from his girl. He looked up at me, his eyes dark with a bruised, pathetic kind of jealousy. No, I'm not rich, and I don't ride a Harley, and I'm not 36. But I wanted to try. I thought if I was your dog, if I wagged my tail enough, you'd look at me instead. I stared at him. The silence in the clinic room stretched so long that the quiet drip, drip, drip of the 4 machine sounded like a ticking time bomb. My brain tried to process the information. David thinks my dad is my sugar daddy. David dyed his hair red and wore glasses because of my brain rot comments. David is jealous of a 36-year-old man who is currently undergoing a severe midlife crisis. Before I could form a coherent sentence, the heavy clinic door swung open again. With a cheerful, obnoxious bang. Sweetie. I brought you the hot beef bone soup from the place down the street. In walked my dad. He had swapped his leather motorcycle jacket for a designer oversized hoodie. His platinum blonde hair perfectly styled, looking effortlessly young, radiant. And entirely too handsome for a father of an 18-year-old. He was holding a plastic takeout bag, a bright, golden smile on his face. The smile instantly vanished the moment he saw David kneeling by my bed. My dad's shoulders squared. He set the soup down on the table with a heavy thud. And stepped between David and me, his protective dad instincts kicking into overdrive. You again, my dad said, his voice dropping into a low, warning register. Didn't I tell you to stay away from my girl? David slowly stood up. Despite the sheer embarrassment of the situation, his jaw set, his broad shoulders tensing as he faced the rival, who supposedly held my heart. He was taller than my dad, but the tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. I won't leave, David said, his voice steadying. I don't care how much money you have, or what you can buy her. You don't deserve her if you're going to let her end up in the hospital. My dad blinked. He looked at David. Then he looked at David's bright red hair. Then he looked at the gold wire-rimmed glasses. Then, he looked at me. Sally, my dad said, pointing a finger at David. Who is this brightly colored youth, and why is he talking to me like we're in a low-budget mafia movie? I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing the linoleum floor would open up and swallow me whole. Dad, I groaned, my voice muffled by my hands. Please. Just stop. David stiffened. His entire body went completely, utterly rigid. Dad? He whispered. Yeah, her dad, my dad said, crossing his arms and looking David up and down. With an amused, patronizing squint. Connor Sinclair. Had her when I was 18, which makes me 36 and technically old enough to be your older brother if I kept up my skincare routine. Now, why were you calling me Daddy? In the alley last night? Because frankly, kid, it was incredibly weird. David's face went through a spectacular, rapid progression of colors. First, he went entirely white. Then, a dusty gray. Finally, a shade of dark burning violet that made his dyed red hair look pale by comparison. His hands dropped to his sides, his fingers twitching. He looked at my dad's platinum blonde hair. He looked at my dad's youthful, slightly immature face. He looked at me, sitting in the hospital bed with a tissue up my nose. You're her father, David whispered, his voice barely audible. Last time I checked, my dad said, reaching into the takeout bag and pulling out a plastic spoon. Though lately, she treats me more like an embarrassing younger brother. What's your deal, Red? You've been glaring at me like I stole your lunch money since move-in day. David looked like he was having a stroke. He slowly turned his head to look at me, his eyes filled with a level of mortification so profound I almost felt sorry for him. David choked out. I have to go. Without another word, he spun on his heel and practically fled the room, his sneakers squeaking violently against the clinic floor as the door swung shut behind him. My dad watched him go, then turned to me, a slow, devilish grin spreading across his face. So, he said, pulling up a plastic stool. That's the guy? Shut up, Dad, I muttered, burying my face in the pillow. Just let the antihistamines put me to sleep. By the time I was discharged from the clinic that evening, the swelling in my face had mostly gone down, though my nose was still tender and pink. My dad had been banned from driving me back to the dorms on his motorcycle, so he had reluctantly brought his truck, lecturing me the entire way about the fragile youth of today. I'm just saying, Sally, he said, turning the steering wheel with one hand. The kid has no poker face. He looked like he wanted to jump out of a window when he realized I was your father. Back in my day, if I wanted to steal your mother from her family, I at least had the decency to look her dad in the eye while doing it. You got mom pregnant at 18 and ran away to a state fair, Dad. You didn't steal her, you practically kidnapped her, I sighed, leaning my head against the cool glass of the passenger window. Details, he muttered, pulling up to the curb outside my dorm. Call me if you need more soup. And tell the red-headed kid that if he sends you more flowers, I'm going to challenge him to a drag race. I'm never speaking to him again, I said, opening the door. So you won't have to. But as I walked up the concrete steps to the dorm lobby, my chest felt heavy. The anger from earlier had faded, leaving behind a strange, hollow ache. I kept thinking about the look on David's face when he showed me his phone. He had actually gone through my social media, cataloged my stupid, ironic comments, and tried to mold himself into what he thought I wanted. The quiet, untouchable king of high school had dyed his hair bright red and worn gold glasses because he thought I liked them. It was the stupidest, most ridiculous thing I had ever heard. And yet, my heart was doing that stupid, fluttering thing again. When I got back to room 302, my roommates were waiting for me like a pack of hungry wolves. Sally, Brody's sister, who happened to be my roommate, Chloe, screamed, lunging off her bed. Is it true? Did David actually send you 999 roses and put you in the hospital? Yes, I mumbled, dropping my bag. And I am currently accepting applications for a new identity. Oh my God, the other roommate, Maya, gasped, holding her phone. The campus gossip page is exploding. Look at this. She slid her phone across the desk. The latest post was a photo of the giant heart-shaped rose display being wheeled out of the lobby by two miserable-looking maintenance guys. The caption read, "Spotted, the legendary 999 rose tribute. Rumor has it the recipient was rushed to the ICU due to extreme emotional shock. Is this true? Love or an accidental biohazard?" Below it, the comments were a disaster. Who is this girl? First the Harley sugar daddy, now the red-headed beast is trying to poison her with pollen? I heard she rejected him so hard she had a medical emergency. I pushed the phone away. I need to sleep for 1,000 years. Wait, there's more, Chloe said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. My brother Brody texted me. He said David is currently sitting on the floor of their dorm room, staring at a wall, refusing to eat. He said David looks like he's ready to join a monastery. I paused, my hand on the bathroom door. Good. He deserves to suffer a little. Sally, he dyed his hair red for you, Chloe pleaded. Do you know how hard it is to get red dye out of dark hair? He's going to have to bleach it to death. He really likes you. He's just incredibly dumb. He has Brenda, I said, the old bitterness slipping back into my voice. They were matching. They weren't matching. Chloe groaned. Brenda is a psycho. She saw David's hair in the morning, went straight to the local salon, and got a cheap spray-on red wax just so she could stand next to him and look like a couple. Brody said. David didn't even look at her. He literally told her she smelled like cheap chemicals and walked away. I stopped. My heart gave a violent, painful thud. A spray-on wax? Yes. She washed it out this afternoon because it was staining her collar. Chloe said, rolling her eyes. She's desperate, Sally. David has ignored her for 3 years, but because he accepted that stupid pinky ring on his birthday, she thinks she has a claim. The ring, I murmured, my grip tightening on the doorknob. He was wearing it yesterday. It has her initials. It does not. Chloe practically shouted. Brody bought that ring at a convenience store to open beer bottles. David took it because he lost his house keys and wanted a heavy keychain, but then he just put it on his pinky because he thought it looked cool. He didn't even know Brenda claimed she bought it for him. My brain felt like it was spinning on an axis. Every single piece of evidence I had compiled against David, every cold look, every misunderstanding, every piece of matching drama, was nothing more than a series of catastrophic, hilarious errors. I stood there in the quiet bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My nose was still a little pink, but the swelling was gone. He doesn't like Brenda. He never did. I walked back out into the bedroom, grabbed my hoodie, and pulled it over my head. Where are you going? Chloe asked, a slow smirk spreading across her face. To prevent a man from joining a monastery, I muttered, grabbing my keys. The night air was cool and crisp as I walked across the dark campus. The brick pathways were lit by the soft, amber glow of the streetlights, casting long shadows across the empty quad. I didn't have to go all the way to the boys' dorm. As I neared the edge of the campus lake, near the small wooden dock where students usually went to skip rocks or hide from their RAs, I saw a solitary figure sitting on the edge of the wood, his knees pulled up to his chest. The moonlight hit his hair, turning the bright, ridiculous red into a soft, glowing crimson. He was wearing his glasses, the thin gold frames catching the light. He looked incredibly small for a guy who was 6'2". I walked quietly down the grassy slope, my sneakers crunching softly against the damp earth. David didn't turn around, but his shoulders tensed. He knew someone was there. If you're here to throw me into the lake, Brody, just do it, he said, his voice quiet and completely defeated. I deserve it. The water is probably freezing, I said, stepping onto the wooden dock. And I don't feel like calling another paramedic today. David stiffened. He spun around so fast he nearly lost his balance on the edge of the dock. Sally? He scrambled to his feet, his dark eyes wide behind his glasses. He looked at me, then immediately looked down at his shoes, his hands stuffing themselves into the pockets of his dark hoodie. You shouldn't be here. The pollen on my clothes. I haven't washed this hoodie yet. I might trigger your allergy again. He took 2 steps backward, trying to put distance between us. I couldn't help it. A small, breathless laugh escaped my lips. David. I'm sorry, he whispered, his jaw tightening. I'm so sorry. I make everything worse. I wanted to impress you, but I just look like a clown. And you're dad. He closed his eyes, a look of physical pain crossing his face. I threatened your dad. I told him he didn't deserve you. I am the stupidest person on this entire campus. You are pretty stupid, I agreed, taking a step closer. But my dad actually thought it was hilarious. He wants to challenge you to a drag race. David opened his eyes, looking utterly bewildered. A drag race? Don't do it. He will absolutely cheat, I said, stopping just a foot away from him. The scent of the lake and the cool wind swirled around us, but there was no smell of roses. Just the faint, clean scent of his soap. I looked up at him, my eyes tracing the sharp lines of his jaw, the gold frames of his glasses, and the bright, messy red hair. Why didn't you just talk to me in high school? I asked softly. You passed me notebook paper. You lent me pens. You sat right in front of me for 3 years. David's throat worked as he swallowed, his dark eyes fixed on mine. Because you were always so bright. You had so many friends, and you were always laughing. I didn't know how to talk to people. Every time I tried to say something to you, my throat would freeze up. I was afraid if I spoke, I'd say something stupid and you'd never look at me again. He let out a dry, self-deprecating laugh. Turns out, I was right. I spoke, and I ended up putting you in the clinic. You didn't put me in the clinic because of your words, I said, a small smile playing at the corners of my mouth. You put me in the clinic because you listened to Brody. David cringed. I'm going to kill him. Please do. But before you do. I reached out, my hand hovering for a second. Before I gently touched the frame of his glasses. David froze, his breath hitching. He didn't move a single muscle, his eyes locked onto mine as if he were afraid that if he blinked I would disappear. The glasses look good, I murmured, my fingertips brushing against his temple. They really do. His hand came out of his pocket, slow and tentative, before his fingers brushed against mine. His skin was warm, a sharp contrast to the cool night air. And the hair? He asked, his voice dropping into that low, rough register that made my heart do dangerous, chaotic flips. Do you hate it? It's ridiculous, I said, looking up at the vibrant red. But, it's growing. On me. A slow, tentative spark of hope lit up his dark eyes. He took a half step closer, the distance between us vanishing. I don't have a motorcycle, he whispered, his eyes dropping to my lips. And I don't have a custom truck. But I can walk you to class every day. I can carry your bags. And I promise I will never, ever buy you flowers again. No flowers, I agreed, my heart hammering against my ribs. And no 43 iced drinks. Deal, he said softly. He leaned down, his breath warm against my cheek. For a guy who had been so untouchable and cold for 3 years, he was trembling. Sally? Yeah? Can I? He hesitated, his knuckles brushing against my cheek, his touch incredibly gentle. Can I kiss you? I didn't answer with words. I simply reached up, grabbed the collar of his hoodie, and pulled him down. The kiss was sweet, warm, and entirely worth the 3 years of staring at the back of his head. His arms wrapped around my waist, lifting me slightly off the wooden dock, holding me as if I were the most precious, fragile thing in the world. When he finally pulled back, his face was flushed, a bright, beautiful smile breaking across his features, the first real, genuine smile I had ever seen on him. So, he whispered, resting his forehead against mine. Am I still your dog? I laughed, my hands resting on his chest, feeling the steady, rapid beat of his heart. You're doing a great job so far, I said. But you still have to pass the final test. David blinked. What test? I smirked, thinking of a certain platinum blonde, 36-year-old Harley rider. You have to survive Sunday dinner with my dad. David's face instantly paled again, but this time, he didn't run. He just tightened his grip on my waist, a determined, stubborn look settling into his dark eyes. I'll bring my own soup, he said. The final day of the freshman phys ed boot camp was held under a crisp, autumn sky. The brutal heat of the summer had finally broken, replaced by a cool breeze that swept across the grassy turf of the campus stadium. The entire freshman class was lined up in formation, our matching black and gray uniforms standing out against the green grass. In the second platoon, Brenda was standing near the back, her hair returned to its natural brown, her expression sour as she watched the front of the line. At the very front, standing side by side, were David and me. His hair was still red, the dye was indeed incredibly stubborn, just as Chloe had predicted, but the bright, neon glow had faded into a deep, rich auburn that looked entirely natural on him. He wore his gold wire-rimmed glasses proudly, the sunlight catching the frames. As the instructor blew the final whistle, signaling the official end of the boot camp, the formation broke into a chaotic, cheering crowd. Students threw their caps into the air, hugging and high-fiving. David didn't look at anyone else. He immediately turned to me, his long strides closing the distance between us. He didn't care about the hundreds of eyes on us, or the whisperings of the campus gossip page. He smoothly took my heavy duffel bag from my shoulder, slinging it over his own, and reached down to slide his hand into mine, his fingers locking perfectly with mine. Ready to go? He asked, his voice warm. Ready, I smiled. As we walked hand in hand toward the stadium exit, a loud, obnoxious roar of a motorcycle engine echoed from the parking lot. Sitting on a gleaming, custom Harley, wearing a brand new leather jacket and sunglasses, was my dad. He pulled off his helmet, casually shook out his platinum blonde hair, and let out a loud, piercing whistle. Hey! Red, my dad shouted across the parking lot, waving a hand. I got the grill fired up. Hope you like your steak rare, because we're going to see if you have the stomach for a real Sinclair dinner. David didn't freeze this time. He looked at my dad, then looked down at me, a soft, confident smile touching his lips. He squeezed my hand gently, his eyes bright behind his gold glasses. I can handle it, David said quietly. And as we walked toward the roaring motorcycle, the whispers of the campus quad finally faded away, replaced by the simple, steady warmth of his hand in mine.